Hi.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, Jochen. Welcome to Practical Bath. Thank you for coming here.
Thanks for inviting me.
And so I'll just dig right in and ask you the first question, which is for everybody who's watching. Can you please tell us about yourself?
So my name is Joren Ossewaarde, and I'm from the Netherlands. I'm 26 years old, almost 27, and I'm studying philosophy in Leuven, which is in Belgium. And yeah, coming semester I'll start my education to become a teacher. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And that's a short introduction.
Okay, where are you from originally?
So in the Netherlands, I was born in Haarlem, which is the capital of North Holland.
Okay, North. And what language do you speak there?
Dutch. It's
Belgium.
yeah, it's just a slightly different accent from Belgium, a little bit more normal. So yeah,
Okay.
it's nice.
So, so the topic that you chose today was existentialism,
Mhm.
right? So, and I know that you know a lot of philosophy. As much as I know you're really good at it. So, I want to know that there are so many topics in philosophy, and out of all the topics, what made you choose this one specifically, existentialism?
So the reason why I chose existentialism is because I would say there were like two times that philosophy really sort of opened my eyes, and the first time was actually with my introductory course. So I won't go into that, but that was just more like a general thing, and it was just like getting the enthusiasm and the wonder of all the philosophical world that's out there. And then the second time was with a course on existentialism. So this was still in my bachelor in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And for that course, we were not really reading academic stuff or like course materials, but we really were reading various pieces of literature. So Dostoevsky, Kafka, Camus, many others that I lost right now. But yeah, and that was really for me periods which was very interesting. But at the end, it also made me kind of realize and kind of question myself, and yeah, to have the existential crisis, sort of say.
So after this course, you like after this one, was it just one course?
Yeah, it was one course.
And like you were saying during this course, you actually went into this existential crisis.
Yeah, it was kind of at the end of the course, and then it was a book by Sartre, which is called Nausea,
Mhm.
and I was reading that, and yeah, Sartre doesn't really depict the brightest kind of world, for our existential hero there. But he does depict it in such a way which is quite relatable.
Hmm.
And after reading that, I was, really kind of thinking, because that's the same process that the main character of the book also goes through. So,
Yeah.
what do I want really with my life, and how can I create some value in it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember it well. It's like I
Okay.
was really down, so yeah,
Wait, you were down at that time.
yeah. That was like, I mean, it was just for it was a brief period, so I can't. It was, but it was quite intense, yeah. And then after that, I emailed my professor, and we talked about it, and then I turned out that for me, teaching was the way to.
Hmm. Well, today I was reading in a book on positive psychology, and it said that when you are feeling down, like when you're having some kind of a negative emotion, whether it's sadness, fear, or anger, in
Mhm.
that time you are much more able to critically look at things. So when you read something, that is critical, and you need to take out like something from it or make meaning of it, you're more likely to do it like much better when you are in a negative emotional state. It's just a piece of information that I think kind of
Right.
what I read today, so I just mentioned it. So you said that in that class you did not really read much. It was just about reading about people and not much.
No, so we read a lot actually, but it was not. We didn't have like a course book telling us what existentialism was, right? Or we didn't read academic papers telling us what existentialism was, but we read existentialist literature. So it was kind of, and especially because it's a story, it really strongly conveyed sort of the emotions and the feelings of what existentialism entails.
Okay. Can you explain, like in your words, what is existentialism?
So existentialism, I would say, starts from the premise that there is not really a final purpose in this world for mankind, which basically takes the form that, you know, it's a secular movement basically, or you could, and this can be atheistic or at least agnostic, right? Like it's basically a philosophical movement that kind of puts God just on the shelf and just looks at the world, you know, without any religious or dogmatic principle, I would say.
So the idea of existentialism is that the world in general has no purpose, or human life?
No, it is rather so for example, like Sartre, which is one of the important existentialists. He put it in the formula that in a religious worldview, essence comes before existence, and in an existentialist worldview, existence comes creates as essence. So kind of what it means is, you know, if you have a God which creates the world, then there is a sort of predestination, right? So there's a certain path that humans are supposed to follow. But if you start from the human perspective, which is really what existentialism is, it's from the individual as a as the individual who's in the world, and this individual has to create his own essence rather than that this essence is already decided.
So according to existentialism, what exactly is the essence then?
Well, that is the beauty of it, and also kind of the reason why why there is such a thing as an existential crisis. So according to existentialism, it is up to each individual to create their own essence.
So anybody can have their own essence.
Yeah, I think Nietzsche, which is also like, you can't really call him existentialist, but you know, he's strongly, like, both Kierkegaard and Nietzsche are kind of like the founding fathers of existentialism without being true existentialists themselves. And Nietzsche, for example, really came up with, it's not really new, but he strongly proposed it, of life as a piece of art, right? So you are your own artist and create the colors, and you can make it like a completely black picture, or, you know, or you can make it with vivid colors. You can make it big, you can make it small. I mean, not everything is, of course, up to you, but at least you can have a certain amount of authority when it comes to deciding how you want to paint your canvas.
This reminds me of this book. You might have read it. It's a small book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So
I want to read that one. Yeah. I'll write it down right now. That's a very good one.
So in that book, he basically, like, one of the things that's a theme in that book is that because he's in a situation in which, like, because he's a Jew and everybody with him, they're all stripped of even basic human rights. Like, they have nothing basically. He doesn't know his family lives or not. He doesn't know if he will live or not the next moment.
Right.
What he basically tries to do is he tries to make every moment meaningful. So every interaction he tries to make it worthwhile.
Right.
Somewhere
Right.
in the book he loses his notebook in which he's written all his research and notes and everything, and he loses it. So at that moment you think, okay, he's lost his book, so
Right.
all his work life has gone, so now his life has no meaning. So then he kind of shifts and thinks that, like, this whole time that he was in that camp, that was when he actually gave meaning to his life, and he
When
realized
he
that.
lost when he lost his book.
Yeah, so when he lost his
Huh.
book, because that had everything he ever noted down, all his
Right.
observations, then he
Right.
lost it.
Right.
So you would be like, oh, I lost my life's work, so my life is worthless. So the question is it
Hmm.
worthless? How do you give it meaning? Just like you explained that you give it meaning, you give it essence. So it's a nice book. I mean,
Yeah.
and a sad one too, but very nice as well.
Right.
Anyways, yeah. Okay.
But that's a nice metaphor though, because basically, right, the existential person also loses the book, which can be a Bible or the Quran or the Torah, in which his direction of life was
Mm,
written. But
yeah.
after he loses this book,
Mm,
then it becomes up to him or
yeah.
herself to
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's also very another interesting thing in that book, which I really liked. That was logotherapy. He talks about logotherapy, and it's about that's how I understood it. Some people understand it in different ways, but logotherapy, like how I understood it, was like how to deal with fear. So
Ah, okay.
when you're afraid of something, you don't do something. So according to logotherapy, what you do is you imagine, like, whatever your fear is, you tell yourself that I'm going to do that. So if I am afraid of, let's say, public speaking, because that's what I have been afraid of, and heights. So if I have to give a
Mhm.
speech in front of thousands of people and I'm scared, right? So according to logotherapy, I'll tell myself that, okay, so why am I scared? I'm scared because I think people are going to make fun of me, right? Because I will maybe speak wrongly or I will make a fool of myself. So what I'll do is I'll tell myself and I prepare myself to that today I'm going to give the worst speech ever. So everybody's going to make the worst fun of me ever. And I am going to be the biggest fool today on that stage. So the worst thing that could ever happen, I prepare myself for it. I say I'm gonna do it.
Hmm.
So the moment you put yourself in that position, the fear goes away
Hmm.
because you were fearing something smaller, but now you're planning to doing something even worse. So that fear just goes.
Ah, it becomes kind of insignificant
Yeah.
by comparison. Hmm.
And he used it on stammering. Like there was a guy, he mentioned his story that that guy always stammered all his life. Like he always stammered a lot, and the only time he didn't stammer was when he was driving and the police person like stopped him for speeding, and he
Hmm.
thought, now's my time to shine. I will stammer and he will feel sorry for me, and he will probably not give me a ticket. So
Hmm.
when the police guy came over, he wanted to stammer really badly, but he couldn't stammer. He just spoke very perfectly. Because at that time, his fear wasn't there, because the reason why he stammered before was gone, like fear of judgment or whatever it was. So at that time, he was
Right.
like, I'm
Right.
going to stammer, but he couldn't. So yeah,
Huh? Hmm. Yeah, because he already prepared himself to
yeah,
stand. Right. Yeah. Hmm.
yes. Okay, so this idea of existentialism, that we all make our own essence and like there isn't really one essence there. How do you think this idea resonates with you personally and with also people around you?
So how it resonates with me. I mean, very, very much so, and it's a little bit of a double-sided sword, right? Like it is, because basically, like I said, you know, like before I depicted all of the nice stuff and all of the positive stuff, you
Yeah.
can get to create yourself, decide for yourself, you can, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, basically that. But the other side is also, yeah, you have nothing really to fall back upon except yourself. And so for me, it is very double. Like right now, what I found is what really helps me if I create my own thing just for the next day. If I write down like the steps of, okay, this is what I'm gonna do for the next day, because I noticed that if I don't do that, then I'll just, yeah, basically not do anything, because there's not really anything that pulls me. So it's a little bit of a trick, of course, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm still doing it myself, but it's more, yeah, if I'm writing it down, it seems like, yesterday Joren said that, okay,
Yeah.
today Joren is gonna do this.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit double, but it gives a lot of freedom as well, for sure. So it's not, you know, not that my parents have anything like that, but imagine that your parents do have like an idea for you of what to do. Yeah, you just have to have this life, and you just have to see what is worth it for you, rather
Yeah.
than like trying to please other people and their ideas.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's very much double-sided, and I think if it's, when it comes to other people, I mean, I can't say, like, of course I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
but what I think maybe is clear in the Western world especially, but maybe increasingly also in other parts of the world, is that I think, you know, people feel this kind of increasing emptiness or lack of support, right? Like there's
Yeah.
like cultural boundaries and cultural structures are decreasing more and more. I think that is true for the entire world, and you know, people have lived like that with that structure for thousands of years, and they've gotten used to it. So now, yeah, how do you feel that emptiness? And I think that is where like capitalism takes advantage of, by trying to sell people their identity, right? Like if you
Yeah.
buy this nice car, then you're a nice person. If you buy an organic product, then you're all of a sudden
Yeah.
very
Exactly.
concerned, you know. And
So
I think,
yeah, then
it's
yeah,
Mhm.
it's like it, like, you know, gives that thing, like this question that then, like, in this kind of world where capitalism is dictating everything, then are you really forming your own essence? Like, are you really doing that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's easy to go to an organic store and spend a few of extra bucks, and it's of course all very
Yeah.
good and nice. But you know, it might be nicer actually to get a thinking and maybe spend like a couple of weeks living on an organic farm.
Yeah.
Of course, not everybody has that
Hmm.
privilege to do so, but it just goes to say that
Yeah.
it's very easy to spend money on a good cause without actually feeling it, right? I think that's like,
Uh,
for example, I think with a lot of like, I'm maybe drifting a little bit off topic now, but
it's okay.
with a lot of beneficiary organizations, it's more that people want to buy away their guilt rather than that they really want to invest in something, right? Like I don't think a lot of people really care like where the money goes to, as long as they can say to their friends, I donated 10 euros to UNICEF. Look at
Yeah.
me being a good citizen, right?
Nice person. Yeah.
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 And whether that actually saves people, or whether it goes into the pockets of some CEO, yeah, you did your job, you gave the money, so your
Yeah.
consciousness is clear.
Yeah. So, like, okay, I have a question. You said that there's an element of doubleness. what I understood was that on one side you say it makes you sort of more responsible for your life because you know that you are responsible, so you take your action yourself, right?
Hmm.
That's one side. And what's the other, like, what's the double side to this? That you're still not
So
responsible, like you're still somehow like influenced by other forces. Is that what you try to say?
um, what I would try to say, and this is kind of like a concept I got from from with double M, Erich from that is,
Okay.
and he was a German psychoanalyst, very much influenced by Freud, and kind of he wrote this book that have been reading, which is called The Freedom. I think we talked about that before, like the
Okay.
freedom, the fear of freedom.
I don't remember. Like, talk about it, maybe it will ring a bell.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And basically that's where he talks about this double-sidedness of this
Okay.
existentialist view. He talks about the freedom to and the freedom from. And so the freedom to do something is kind of the positive side because
Yeah.
you're more free to decide on your own path, but at the same time you have a freedom from, you don't have this sort of cozy background, right, like the family structure is, especially in the
Uh,
West, is becoming less and less.
yeah.
You don't really have a culture that says like, oh, this is what you should do, this is what will make you happy. You
Mm.
know, if you do this, you'll be a righteous person. So yeah, like I said, so the freedom to is really the freedom to create yourself and to decide on your own, and the freedom from is really this lack of structure. Basically, that is what it is, because religion,
Yeah.
culture, family, these are all social structures, which, especially since the Middle Ages for Europe, have really decreased steadily
Yeah.
and
But
increasingly.
isn't that what from freedom they want? Like, isn't that what the whole idea is, that freedom from these structures and just the individual?
Yeah, they're very much
Yeah.
interlinked. So
Yeah.
that's it's two sides of the
Mhm.
same coin. You
Yeah.
can't
That's the
have the
double edge.
one you
Mm.
can't have the one without
Yeah.
having the other, right? So, but yeah, I think you see it with so many people having like psychological issues today, right? Like a burnout or stressed, depressed, and anxious, suicide rates, like
Yeah.
all of these things. But at the same time, you also see, like so many more individuals becoming, like how many artists do we have today? Like it's so easy nowadays just to buy a computer program and
Yeah.
start creating music or art or
Yeah.
writing, right? So
Yeah.
it's two sides, and you can't really have, I think, one without the other.
So
But
if I
yeah,
look at it, like, you know how they're like, so from where I am, our cultures are more collectivistic and
right.
the West is more individualistic. So like you said, the idea, if that's the idea that's kind of shaping the West now, people are more individualistic, so whatever they want comes first. Whatever is something that I think is important comes first. But in a collectivist culture, you don't just think about yourself. It's like, okay, I want this, but how will my parents feel about it? How will my
Right.
brothers feel about it? If everybody's fine, okay, I'll do it. However, like, in our culture, since we have religion, so the idea of religion is that there is no compulsion in religion. So you are free to do what you want. Like, you can become whatever profession you want to take, right? And similarly, you can also, like, according to the religion, you can take whatever religion you want. Of course, parents want you to take their religion. If you take another one, they're going to be sad about it. So, but if you take another religion, like, so parents are not in a position to force you to
Hmm.
adopt their religion. So in that sense, you are free to have your own essence, and you are free to live the way you want to live. And at the same time, because religion tells the parents that you cannot force them, so the culture stays there. So they cannot, cut you out and say that, okay, you are an individual, no longer a part of this, support system. So, I mean, if things actually happened that way, I think this doubleness could have been actually overcome. I mean, that's just a thought that came to my mind. I could be wrong, of course, but
no, I think it's not. Yeah,
yeah.
it's.
Anyways, okay.
I,
So I
I, I think I think there needs to be a nice balance, right? Like you say, with this
yeah
community, and which still allows you to be free, but also
yeah because
gives
because the essence of religion is that you believe yourself. Like believing because
right.
everybody else is believing isn't really belief. It's just following the status quo. So it is
Right.
the whole that idea is kind of, you can say, existentialist in itself, that you have to know the essence within you. So yeah, and then
Right.
yeah, everything just, it's a big
Right.
debate if we go into that. So let's just not talk about it right now. Anyways,
Hmm.
so okay, so you mentioned that even in that course you talked about some philosophers who wrote, who played a big role in building this philosophy. So can you talk about some, like which were the ones who inspired you, and any interesting ones that you could tell me?
Um. So one. So yeah, just taking like one of the philosophers, I didn't learn so much about him during that course, but I learned about him in this semester actually for my master's thesis. So this one is Kierkegaard,
Okay.
and he is actually a Christian existentialist. So what I said previously of putting God between brackets is perhaps not entirely justified, at least.
Mhm.
Mm, he's a little bit of an exception, I would say, but he's also one of the, like I said, one of the founding fathers. So for Kierkegaard, it's pretty much like you said, right? Like he made the difference between Christianity on the one hand and Christendom on the other hand, and what he really resented in his Danish fellow men and women in Denmark was that basically everybody assumed to be Christian just by virtue of being born in a Christian society without just like you said, right? Like just
Yeah.
because I'm born from Christian parents in a Christian society, and yeah, sure, I guess I go to church Sunday and I have the Bible at home, so I have my checklist of all the things that would make me
Yes.
devout.
I do this whenever I'm scared, so I'm Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. So of course, it's a very superficial way to experience religion.
Oh.
Um, so what he really so that is the book called Fear and Trembling, which I read for my thesis.
Okay.
And in there he talks about the story of Abraham, which is then for him really a true sort of example of what it means to be a religious person, because this, yeah, as you know, right, Abraham is also important in Islam, of course.
Yes.
So Abraham has to sacrifice Isaac.
Hmm.
God calls
Yeah.
upon him to sacrifice his son.
Yeah.
And so for Kierkegaard, is then the interesting thing is that this religious person, which Abraham obviously is, and he has a connection with God, and God promises him all these kinds of things, and uh, he acts according to these promises. But then when his son needs to be murdered, there's no way for Abraham to explain that to his, or sacrificed, I should say. But it's, of course, for other people, it seems like
Yeah.
a murder if the father all of a sudden
Yeah.
takes his son to a mountain and
Hmm.
stabs him with a knife. So for Kierkegaard, it's kind of to say like if you have a sort of fake, or I should say superficial way of religion, you can really have it more in a sort of in a common sense when you are religious as an individual, you have to trust on yourself, even if everybody around you might not
Yeah.
understand you or might even, denounce your activity.
Yeah.
You have to trust on your feelings and your connection to God, the
Yeah.
higher, whatever that may be.
Mm.
And so basically, what he argues in that book is to say, like, well, okay, if you want to call yourself Christian, you need to put yourself in Abraham's shoes. And
Yeah.
would you be able to do what he did? Would
Yeah.
you be able to feel this fear and trembling as he did when he was walking with the son up the mountain, knowing that everybody would think he was a murderer,
Yeah.
even though God asked it of him? Or would you say,
Yeah.
it's not for me? And Kierkegaard says, both are fine, but not everybody has to be as virtuous or as
Yeah.
brave as Abraham, but perhaps you should not really be calling yourself a Christian or a religious in the true sense of the word if you're not wanting to believe in your in your inner guide, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a very interesting point that he makes. Like two very interesting points, like that I would quite resonate with.
Wait, sorry, your last things were dropping out. Your response.
Wait. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're back on track.
Yeah, I'm saying that like it's very interesting the points that he makes, especially like 2 points that I think I really closely understand and resonate with. Like this, what's the name of this guy?
Kierkegaard, Søren Kierkegaard.
Okay, you'll have to write the spellings for me later. So,
Yeah, sure,
anyways,
I'll write it
yeah,
down.
like the first thing that you said, that you need to have this faith or belief in yourself and in God, even if the world is not, And at that time, even I've heard that when Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, when he believed in God, nobody in the world believed in a God. Like he was the only believer in the whole world who believed in him at that time.
Right.
So you need a lot of, I can say, perseverance and self-confidence to actually reach that level, and
Right.
the second thing about the sacrifice, like he was basically sacrificing his son, his dearest son, for God, like because as much as I know, God asked him to sacrifice his most precious thing for him, so that was his son. So the idea that we should take from him, like he says, put yourself in Ibrahim, as a Prophet Ibrahim's shoes, is that it's okay to sacrifice something that you love so much just for God, you know so even if it's money, wealth, or something else, like whatever you think is really close to you, even that you can sacrifice for God, and that's okay, I guess. So like being able to not like being able to give away something that you love only for him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That is what Kierkegaard then calls the sort of the double movement. So the sacrifice is the first movement. So like as a religious person, he says that you should be willing to give up basically all of the earthly things, possessions, relationships, right? Like
Yeah.
the first importance in your life should always be your relationship to God, and the rest of the things come second.
Yeah.
But then for Kierkegaard, it is the importance part, and that is what really also makes him an existentialist, is that you do not just say like, I gave everything up, like fuck this life, I'll just have a nice life in heaven where God promises me everything. But Kierkegaard says, no, you should still be able to enjoy this current life, because this current life was also brought to you by God. So even though you give up basically all your possessions, if you say like, I don't care about my car, but hey, I still enjoy to ride in it, right? But if it would go, it goes. Okay, fine. That's okay.
Exactly.
Don't worry.
So you were talking about that we should also enjoy this life because God gave it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And And that is the thing, like people, like you said, you cannot just leave everything and say I am obeying God, because God doesn't want you to do that either. He tells you what to do. Like Abraham didn't just decide one day that I'll sacrifice my son. Like it was God's order. So if you, and God wants you to live in this world like a productive person, like bring about good fruits, you know. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
makes sense. Makes
Yeah,
it's an interesting book. I'll probably read it too, you know.
yeah, it's very, very nice. Also very accessible, I would say.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
okay, tell me about that other philosopher, Camus. What was the
Ah,
story? Yeah,
Camus.
yeah.
Yes. So that's this book.
Okay,
It's in Dutch, but I guess
okay.
yeah, the myth of Sisyphus.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, like so hmm, I was trying to find out a little bit more like what's how to really to um, separate separate existentialist from an absurd person,
Hmm.
and kind of what I can see. It is not very clear to me, but at least what I can see is that despite sort of the purposelessness of life, right? Like in the absolute sense, which existentialist says, and this the hopelessness, which existentialist, right? There's no higher being which
Hmm.
allows you to have much hope. Camus still says that we should be happy in this life, and it is also in the sense, what was his phrase again? Yeah, it's also in that sense absurdist, because he says that the absurd hero, which is then really something he talks about with, for him, Sisyphus is the embodiment of the absurd hero. We'll come back to that. But basically, for him, absurdism is sort of the battle that we have to fight as individuals, because we are looking for answers, right? That is something that is
Hmm.
in human nature, I would say, to look for answers, look for meaning, which is ultimately a kind of answer. But at the same time, there's also the realization that we are not able to get absolute answers. So for Camus, it is a sort of paradox where we already know that we lost the battle, so to say.
Hmm.
But at the same time, that is not a reason for him to give up, but it's only a reason to keep on going. And so it's more of the, I guess, the point of the story, to kind of summarize it a little bit superficially, is to say that the journey is more important than the end,
Yeah.
right? Because there is no end for absurdism. So if there's no end, then all you can do is just walk and enjoy the walk while you're doing it.
Okay. And what exactly is absurdism? Is it the same as existentialism, or is it different?
So yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have the exact things. I mean, like for sure,
Yeah.
uh, absurdism is something which arises from existentialists,
Hmm.
but for some reason Camus didn't want to be called an existentialist,
Okay.
because he had some feud with Sartre,
Hmm.
and yeah, I don't know the specific,
Okay. Okay. So
but
what is
they don't contradict
yeah.
each other. I would rather say that they're more like two parallel paths.
Okay. Okay. And what was his story that he once told me about the rock?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that is that is really the myth of Sisyphus, which is then told as a Greek tragic story. So the story is about a man called Sisyphus, which is a very wise and clever man, and because he has so much knowledge, he also knows about all of the mischievous deeds of the gods. So, for example, Zeus was sleeping with the daughter of one of the kings,
Okay.
and he tells on Zeus. So he he informs what Zeus was doing, and of course Zeus isn't having any of that, right? Like he wants to have his enjoyable private time with the daughter without anyone knowing about it. So of course Zeus becomes angry with him, and then he let's see. Right, he sends death to kill Sisyphus.
Okay.
And just let me see how the story goes. Yeah, and then in some reason I think Sisyphus manages to lock death up. So that is possible apparently in Greek tragedy. So death becomes locked up, so nobody dies anymore, which is also something from absurdism. It's really to celebrate life, and death is only the
Okay.
yeah, we shouldn't be looking forward to that. So that's ties in with.
Okay.
But in the end, of course, then Hades is waiting for all the dead people to arrive in his in the underworld. So he asks Zeus, like, hey, could you free Death so people come again? So Death is freed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sisyphus tricks the gods again by letting his wife desecrate his body. He tells his wife to desecrate his body so that when he goes down to the underworld and he sees that he's being desecrated, he doesn't have the 2 coins on his eyes to pay for the ferry across the river.
Mm-hmm.
So he tells Hades, like, I have to go back to chastise my wife and to punish her for desecrating me. Mm-hmm. So he goes back to the world, and then he just like continues partying, continues celebrating his life. So then, after several years, Hades is like, hey, this guy was supposed to come back, but he is still not here. He's still enjoying life and partying and all that. So then finally, I think it's what is it? The guy with the little wings on his feet. It's the messenger god.
Gabriel.
Hermes, yes. Hermes. And Hermes finally grabs him and takes him down into the underworld. And of course, that is then where the punishment comes from. The gods create this absolutely pointless task from which there is no hope, because he has to endlessly push a rock up a mountain. And every time the rock is almost at the peak, like after all these steps, the rock rolls down the mountain again. Mm-hmm. And Sisyphus has to then walk down the mountain, pick up this rock again, and start all over again.
So what is the whole point of the story, like the moral of the story?
Right. So the whole moral of the story, I made some notes. I'll look them up. Right. So for Camus, then the story of Sisyphus really resembles human existence, because we're kind of put in a situations which we didn't really choose for ourselves, and we are faced with the task, or with the task, or basically with an existence which is hopeless and which is also purposelessness, right? Like we just move, we do things, and in the end we die. We don't know when we die. It might be tomorrow, but it might be in 100 years. But in the end, we die. So it's there's not really any purpose to it. But
for existentialists, yes, there is.
Sorry?
For existentialists, yes, there is no purpose.
Right. Yeah. Or at least there's no higher purpose. I should say.
Yeah, because they still try to find purpose in small things. So yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that is basically what it is. So rather than So Sisyphus, at least that is then the interpretation of Camus. So while for the gods, it is created as this punishment for him, he says that the absurdism of Sisyphus is that he tries to instead transform this punishment into his own happiness. So his rock becomes his own rock, and every little drop of sweat, he is like, yeah, this is my own. This is what I create. And with every push, with every, like with every strain of his body in which he pushes it, he finds himself again because he is really facing. And the rock, of course, also really symbolizes the earthly life, which he continuously presses his face against.
Kind of like Viktor Frankl, the guy's search for meaning, like the one who's in a, what do you call those camps?
Extermination camps.
Yeah, so he's there, but he's still finding purpose there. So it's kind of like that too. Yeah. So, can you?
Yes, so this is the. Oops.
Okay, so the red thing is the.
Yeah, so the red thing is, well, in this case, I made a balloon out of it to make it a little bit more absurd.
Okay.
So rather than a rock, he is pushing a balloon, which
and it's more difficult. It requires more delicacy. What if it bursts?
Right, yeah, and it also makes it, just a little bit stranger, but it has the element of festivity in it, which I liked. And the artists created the stars to sort of have this feeling of eternity in it. So, yeah.
Very interesting. So every time you look at it, look at your arm, this idea comes to your head that, even if there is no point in this world, I should just keep going. I should try to find meaning.
Yeah, and there's also sort of repetitiveness in it, right? So there's like, if I come back to some issues that I've had in the past, rather than, of course, I also do that, right? Like but it is sort of this reminder, like, okay, this is just part of it, it's not just a straight line from the bottom to up, but yeah, it just falls down again. And I guess I'll have to have peace with that, and just accept it, and hopefully maybe push the rock just a little bit higher. But yeah, I know there's no final point, which
hopefully one day there will be a final point. Nobody.
Well, at least for Sisyphus there is not. For Sisyphus there is not.
Maybe for Jochen there is.
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll find it later.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to ask you a little bit difficult question, but maybe it's really easy for you. I mean, it will be difficult for me. So.
Wait, I think I'll have to go though. I'm really sorry.
Small question. Like you can answer it like this. So,
okay.
Yeah. So what would be your most compassionate advice to a fellow human being based on this ideology, theory, philosophy?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think what's really ties it together is what I would say is awareness, and that is what Camus says. Like when Sisyphus walks down again, he really becomes aware of his whole situation, and I think that is very much important. If we are only aware of our freedom, we won't really be aware of what allows his freedom to be there. And if we're only aware of our constraints, then we don't really focus on what other capacities we have in ourselves.
That's true.
That others might not see. So, yeah, I think it's really existentialism becomes an awareness of yourself in the first place, and then I think from there you can also become more aware of others. and of the world as a whole. So it is it is a strangely hopeful philosophical movement.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to say something really double, that maybe existentialism can actually lead somebody to a religion also. I think it,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and
But in a very
eventually to a higher purpose. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. I don't think those are Sartre would disagree, but I'm not so agreeing with him on that one. I think
Yeah.
yeah, if like for Kierkegaard, for example, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So thank you for giving me so much of your time, and hopefully maybe if we have time we can